On April 29, 2026, U.S. Central Command sent a request up the chain all the way to the President. They wanted a very specific weapon for the Middle East, the fastest one America has ever built. But there was a problem. The weapon they were asking for has never been fired in combat. It failed test after test for nearly a decade, and right now, the Pentagon's own budget proposal wants to shut it down next year. It's called Dark Eagle, and if the order comes down, the Army is about to make hypersonic history. So what exactly is the Pentagon about to deploy, and why do they think it's the only thing that can do the job? To understand Dark Eagle, you have to understand what hypersonic actually means in practice. Anything traveling faster than Mach 5 qualifies. That's 5 times the speed of sound, roughly 3,800 miles per hour at altitude. Dark Eagle hits that number as a baseline. During the boost phase, reports put its peak speed somewhere around Mach 17, or roughly 13,000 miles per hour. From the moment it launches to the moment it hits a target nearly 1,800 miles away, you're looking at 15 to 20 minutes. For comparison, the precision strike missile that the Army has been firing in the Middle East has a range of about 300 miles. Dark Eagle's reach is more than 5.5 times that. But raw speed isn't what makes this thing different. A regular ballistic missile is also fast. It just goes up, follows a predictable arc, and comes down. Modern air defense systems can track that. They can intercept it. Dark Eagle doesn't do any of that. After the 2-stage solid-fuel booster gets the missile up to hypersonic speed, the booster jettisons. What's left is something called the Common Hypersonic Glide Body, an unpowered, wedge-shaped vehicle that skims along the upper atmosphere, maneuvering laterally, changing altitude, shifting direction in real time. Radar struggles to track it. Interceptors can't calculate where it's actually going. By the time anyone figures out what's happening, it's already there. Which raises an obvious question. Why is CENTCOM asking for this specific weapon right now? The short answer is geography. The longer answer is that Iran moved. Earlier this year, Iran started repositioning its ballistic missile launchers. They pulled them back, further inland, into hardened sites well past the 300-mile reach of what the U.S. currently has on the ground in the region. According to reporting from Bloomberg and confirmed across multiple defense outlets, those launchers are now sitting comfortably outside the strike envelope of every conventional Army system in theater. They're not outside the range of B-2 bombers or carrier-launched aircraft, but those come with their own complications, like pilots in the air, long flight times, detectable approaches, and aircraft carriers that have to stay within range of Iranian anti-ship missiles. Dark Eagle solves that problem. You roll the launchers into position somewhere in the region, you keep them mobile, and from a standoff distance, you can hit a hardened target deep inside Iran in under 20 minutes. The launchers don't even need to stay still. The whole point of mounting these things on heavy tactical trucks is so they can shoot, move, and disappear before anyone figures out where the launch came from. Each battery has 4 launchers, and each launcher carries 2 missiles. That works out to 8 rounds per battery. Not a lot of magazine depth, honestly, but each one of those 8 is the kind of round you'd use to take out a specific high-value target that you absolutely need gone in a hurry. The kinds of targets we're talking about matter here. We're looking at mobile ballistic missile launchers, hardened underground command centers, air defense radars, drone production facilities, anything that's time-sensitive, deeply buried, or moving. The whole reason Iran moved those launchers further inland was to put them outside the reach of conventional Army fires while keeping them ready to fire back. They were creating sanctuary zones, places where the missiles could sit, reload, and disperse without the U.S. being able to do much about it from the ground. Dark Eagle erases that sanctuary. There's nowhere inside Iran's borders that a forward-deployed battery couldn't reach, which sounds great on paper, but here's the part the Pentagon doesn't usually want to talk about. Getting to this point was a disaster. The story actually starts back in 2017, when the original glide body design successfully completed its first flight test from Hawaii out to the Marshall Islands. 2,000-plus nautical miles. By 2020, they ran it again. Both successes. Pentagon leadership got excited. The Army set itself a goal, and it was an aggressive one. Field the prototype battery with live rounds by the end of fiscal year 2023. Then, everything stopped working. October 2021, the booster rocket failed during a test. The glide body never even got to fly. That one was officially logged as a no test. June 2022, they tried again with the full system. Another failure. October of that year, the next scheduled test got pulled entirely while engineers figured out what was going wrong. September 2023, the deadline year, they wheeled the missile out to the launch pad and the pre-flight checks caught a mechanical failure before they could even fire it. The Assistant Secretary of the Army at the time admitted publicly that the launcher itself had an engineering problem. By the end of 2023, the program was sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars in sunk costs, and not a single combat-ready missile to show for it. Then in June 2024, something finally worked. A full end-to-end flight test from the Pacific Missile Range facility in Kauai. The missile flew over 2,000 miles and hit the target area out in the Marshall Islands. December 2024, they ran it again from Cape Canaveral, this time with the operational launcher and the Battery Operations Center fully integrated. Same result. The system was real. In April of last year, the Army officially gave it a name, Dark Eagle. By December 2025, the first battery was being fielded to its operational unit. Which brings us to today. If breakdowns like this are your thing, hit subscribe. We dig into stuff like this every week. The unit that actually operates Dark Eagle is based at Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington State. Specifically, it sits inside the Long Range Fires Battalion, attached to the Army's Multi-Domain Task Force structure. Bravo Battery, under the 1st Battalion of the 17th Field Artillery Regiment, has been designated as the first to receive operational rounds. Now, the term Multi-Domain Task Force is worth pausing on. The Army built these units specifically for a new kind of warfare. They don't just shoot missiles. They integrate cyber operations, space assets, electronic warfare, intelligence collection, and long-range fires into a single coordinated package. The concept is that a small, agile unit operating across multiple domains can produce effects that previously required entire wings of the Air Force working together. Dark Eagle is the centerpiece of that capability. Take out a command and control node. Hit a mobile missile launcher before it can move again. Crater a runway 1,700 miles from where the round was fired. The kinds of missions that used to need stealth aircraft, in-flight refueling, hours of planning, and a pilot willing to put their life on the line over hostile airspace. Now you can do it from a parking lot in the desert. The soldiers operating these systems are doing a different job than the artillerymen who served in Iraq or Afghanistan. The skill set is closer to a fighter squadron than a traditional field artillery crew. Targeting in this role involves satellite networks, encrypted data links, and time on target windows measured in seconds. The training pipeline runs significantly longer than standard artillery, and the people they're pulling for this work tend to be selected very carefully. Day to day, the battery practices something called shoot and scoot drills. Roll the launcher into a firing position, get the missile up on the rail, simulate the launch, then break down and move before any theoretical counter-battery fire could land on top of them. The drill cycle is measured in minutes. The whole logistical chain behind it, the reload trucks, the communications gear, the battery operations center where targeting data comes in and firing solutions go out. All of it has to keep pace with a missile that flies faster than anything they've ever had to manage before. But then comes the part that doesn't quite add up. At the exact same moment that CENTCOM is asking for Dark Eagle to go to war, the administration's own fiscal year 2027 budget proposal calls for shutting down Army production of the weapon entirely. The plan is to transfer the whole program over to the Navy. Same missile, same glide body, but launched from ships and submarines instead of trucks. Think about what that means. The Army just spent 8 years and roughly $2.7 billion getting this thing to work. They've built one operational battery. They're about to send it to its first combat theater. And in the same breath, the Pentagon is signaling that the ground-based version of the program might not exist a year from now. This is where people disagree. Some defense analysts argue the Navy version makes more sense. Ships are mobile, harder to target, and don't require host nation permission to forward deploy. Other analysts say killing the Army's road mobile version throws away a capability that's much harder to track than anything sitting on the ocean. There's no consensus on who's right. What there is consensus on is that the global hypersonic race left the U.S. playing catch-up. China's DF-17 has been operational since 2019. It's a road mobile boost glide system, similar concept to Dark Eagle, with a reported range somewhere between 1,200 and 1,500 miles. Russia fields the Avangard, the Zircon, and the Kinzhal. The Avangard is in a different category entirely, nuclear capable, intercontinental, and Russia claims it hits Mach 27. There's no air defense system on the planet that can reliably intercept that. Dark Eagle puts the U.S. into the conversation. It doesn't put it ahead. If the deployment to the Middle East actually happens, it would be the first time any U.S. hypersonic weapon has been used operationally. It wouldn't be a test or a demonstration. It would be a real strike against a real target in a real conflict. The kind of moment that ends up in textbooks, the kind of decision that shifts how every other military on Earth thinks about deterrence going forward. Whether that decision gets made is now sitting on the president's desk. And as of right now, no public confirmation either way. Dark Eagle started as a Pentagon answer to two countries that had already left the U.S. behind. After 8 years, a string of public failures, and one renaming ceremony, it's finally a real weapon. The first round won't be fired at a range in the Pacific. There's another one on screen if you're not done yet.